Forum. I'm Adam, and I call myself a Sixtiesologist because I'm into all things 60s. Here you see a scene from the great 60s film David and Lisa. It was directed by Frank Perry and stars Keir Dullea, Janet Margolin, and yeah, it's great. It's like a French New Wave style, black and white film about two disturbed teens. It's a breakthrough film, and I relate to it. But that's the thing. I mean, films today, I can't relate to them, especially the big blockbuster Hollywood garbage. You know, even the stuff that wins Academy Awards, I don't like. Here's Howard DeSilva and his great comeback role as a psychologist, helping two disturbed teens in David and Lisa, 1962. So Keir Dullea went on to 2001 fame, as we all know. Yeah, so you don't see films like this. This is a low-budget film. There's nothing like this around nowadays, and where it explores the inner depths of adolescence. I mean, these characters went to the extremes, and they were fictional, even though a lot of people believe they were based on real people. According to the original author, Theodore Rubin, psychiatrist in New York, he says they were fictional. Maybe they were based on something, but you know, we could tell by the extremist psychoses or neuroses of the characters. David's character, extreme aversion to touch. Janet's character, split personality. That, you know, you could tell they're fictional characters, maybe based on something, but yeah, but the author says they were fictional. Yeah, it was a breakthrough film. Yeah, so what I was going to say before about Hollywood films today, they are junk, you know. Yeah, I haven't seen a good film in a long time that came out as a new film. Yeah, I don't know. I don't relate to them. I don't know where they're coming from, or maybe I do know where they're coming from, and that's why I don't like them. But I know where films like this are coming from, and you know, all the great 60s films, The Graduate, and Casino Royale. It's one of my favorite satires as a film. I'm talking about the 1966 film. And I do want to say that I think Austin Powers is terrible. I mean, it's infantile humor. It's not funny. It's like a cheap cartoon version of the 60s, you know? So the 60s, to me, is something with a lot more depth than Austin Powers' shallow humor. And it's a cheap rip-off of the 60s. But anyway, we're now at the beginning of the 2008 elections, and it's worth looking back at the 68 elections, which I do remember as a kid. When people talk about the 60s, they place, I think, an over amount of importance to politics. To me, 60s was about culture, about mind expansion, about enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment, and you know, the political game people concentrate on, you know, and politics is a game, and you know, I mean, it's worth seeing all the movements for change coming up in the 60s, civil rights, etc. But I don't know. I mean, people place too much importance on politics. You know, as far as analysis of the 60s, it always ends up in politics rather than what's important to me, which is the cultural aspects of it. And, you know, great art was being made all over the place, all over the world, and that's not being concentrated enough by 60s analysis. Anyway, I'm using this film because this is a great example of what the 60s were about. Even though it was early 60s, it was before the whole explosion of the British invasion and psychedelia and everything. But there were a lot of progenitors to that, and this is one of them. Frank Perry had some other important films, important to me anyway. Ladybug, about kind of like about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think it was a true story about these kids in the Cuban Missile Crisis. What else did he do? Last Summer, that was a book by Evan Hunter, who's also known as Ed McBain, who did the New York police crime novels, and he did Blackboard Jungle. But yeah, Last Summer was an interesting thing. It was from 1969, and it starred Richard Thomas before John Boy, and it starred Barbara Hershey, and it was about these teens on Fire Island in the late 60s. And it's interesting because I was like 5 in 1969 and went to Fire Island on a trip and saw real hippies there. And that was about the time this movie was being filmed. Well, it was released in '69. Johnson, you know, as far as I can see, was a good president in some ways, you know, passing the Civil Rights Bill, and, you know, and he did a lot of progressive things, or he wanted to have the war on poverty, but Vietnam got in the way. And by the way, he died when he was about 42 years old, that actor. I don't know the specifics really, but one more thing about this film. It was filmed in Philadelphia area, and this is the final scene. And that is the Philadelphia Museum of Modern Art, or is it just Philadelphia Art Museum? Film, that's a shot taken from the museum out toward Keir Dullea and the rest of Philadelphia. This was 14 years before Rocky. That's what these steps are famous for, the Rocky Run. But here's Keir Dullea running up the steps in 1962. I was there a few months ago and went to the museum. But anyway, again, this film to me is a good representation, a good quintessential 60s film, at least as far as being early 60s forerunner of what was to come. And what else do I want to say? I talked about Frank Perry's other films. Janet Margolin in this film never really achieved fame, or big fame, but she died in 1993, ovarian cancer. And, you know, she's also is known as Woody Allen's wife in Take the Money and Run, and she was in a few Woody Allen films. And I think I'll leave it at that for now. That's the first installment of the 60s Forum.